Hi folks, this week it's a bit more of the same because we're still fired up about the CCC's attempts to change the so-called TRAD amendments currently before Parliament. And I also want to talk about the regulation, the accompanying regulation, which has created a lot of concern, especially amongst council CEOs. In relation to the attempts to do away with the 200-year-long common law protections of intent to commit a crime, we've been buoyed by the support we've received from the legal fraternity. I met earlier this week with a representative of the Law Society. I've had very senior judicial figures, and I've had senior people from the bar speak to me about the strength of our argument and why it's so important that in our legal system the prosecution must prove intent. We'll be making a further submission to the Parliamentary Committee. It's called for all parties to be heard again on that specific point of doing away with the so-called mens rea defence. I turned, of course, to the regulation, and it's caused a lot of consternation amongst the council CEOs. This idea of informal meetings has really stirred the pot, and indeed the notion of members of the public attending site inspections and the like. We've been able to give some really positive examples of just how silly it is, that for the like of the Cookshire, their site inspection of their road system takes a week. It's a week long. They actually camp out along the way. There are plenty of other rural and remote councils where they go out for days at a time to do road inspections. When it comes to the big cities, we're talking about major intersections with major developments being proposed. We could have hundreds of people on corners and creating all sorts of real, genuine, dangerous situations for the public. So there has to be a lot of rethinking goes on about exactly what these meetings are, when they are informal and when they're not. At the end of the day, all elected members, anyone involved in the political process, and I use the small p politics, are protected by the implied right of political association and speech in the Australian Constitution. And we've got to remember, members of the state parliament also meet together in informal meetings, and it's called the party room or caucus or even factions. Now, they're not for one moment proposing that those meetings be open to the public or minuted. So we're going to be pushing very hard that we're treated just the same as the ministers, as the members of parliament, and that the system that we come up with is workable. We can't have a situation where it's not possible to meet with the Premier or the Prime Minister because we haven't passed a resolution to have an informal meeting. That's the nonsensical side of what's being thrown up. The good thing is the government's listening. We've had a series of meetings over the last week, and we will continue to fight hard for a fair and reasonable outcome to the regulation governing informal meetings and public access to council inspections and the likes. Thanks very much.